Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight we're stepping into the cluttered, humming world of a Victorian London, a city of smoke, steam, and quiet ingenuity, where the narrow streets wind past workshops filled with brass, copper, and the faint scent of lamp oil. You're not a celebrated scientist or a famed engineer, just an ordinary tinkerer drifting through a world alive with possibilities. Before we start, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair, plus other sleep tools, in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You awaken before the sun does. The room is still blue with the colour of early morning, that peculiar hour when even the streets of London seem to hesitate before beginning their daily commotion. The air is cool, touched with the faint, metallic scent of chimney soot and damp stone. You lie there for a while, listening to the distant murmur of wheels over cobblestones and the low groan of the river somewhere beyond the fog. It's a sound you've grown used to, the city breathing in its sleep. Your small room is more workshop than home. The bed is narrow, the floor crowded with wooden crates, glass jars, and coiled wire that seems to have lives of their own. Against the window, half covered in condensation, stands your latest creation, a brass and tin contraption that looks both magnificent and faintly ridiculous. It leans slightly to one side, as though even it is unsure of its purpose. You sit up slowly. The chill in the air finds your hands first. Hands that never quite heal from nicks and burns. There's a small tin kettle by the hearth, still holding the ghost of yesterday's warmth. You pour water into a chipped porcelain cup, drop in a sliver of tea, and watch it cloud the water like faint smoke. The world feels quiet in that way. It only does before the first factory whistle. You sip and let the bitterness wake you. Outside, the fog presses against the window, soft and alive, turning the outlines of chimneys and rooftops into pale smudges. Somewhere below, a cart rumbles by, its wheels clattering over the stones, and for a brief moment the workshop trembles. You turn toward your workbench. The table is cluttered but familiar. Copper shavings, glinting like lost coins, tiny screwdrivers lined up like soldiers, and an oil lamp still warm from the night before. There are notebooks too, filled with sketches of impossible things, flying umbrellas, mechanical songbirds, and a device that claims it will translate thoughts into sound. You run your thumb along the edge of one of the pages, tracing the uneven lines drawn in sleepless hours. Your handwriting seems almost foreign to you in the morning light. Hurried, excited, uneven. The scrawl of someone who believed he might have been close to something extraordinary. You set the cup down and begin again. The contraption before you, the one leaning like a tired horse, is your latest and perhaps most hopeful attempt. It began as an idea, scribbled in the margin of a newspaper. A small engine that might move without smoke or steam, powered only by compressed air. You adjust a valve, the brass cool beneath your fingertips. Somewhere deep within the machine, a spring sighs softly. You strike a match, light the lamp, and the soft orange glow spills across the metal, painting it with warmth. The flame flickers, reflected in the polished gears, and for a brief moment the entire workshop feels alive. You can almost hear the whisper of progress, that invisible hum that fills the city these days. Out there, men are building bridges of iron, ships that swallow oceans, and engines that carry voices down wires. London, you think, is no longer a city of soot and fog, but of sparks and smoke. A great organism, stitched together by invention. The thought both comforts and unnerves you. You are one of them, and yet not quite. You pick up a small wrench and tighten a bolt. The contraption wheezes faintly, releasing a hiss of warm air that smells faintly of oil and hope. For a moment, you imagine it might actually work. You press your ear close and hear the faint rhythm of a piston, uneven, hesitant, like the heartbeat of a small animal. The floorboards creak as you shift your weight. The sound feels loud in the morning stillness. You step back, squinting through the lamp's haze, and make a note in your ledger. Slight movement, pressure weak, must test again after breakfast. Breakfast will be a crust of bread and whatever jam is left in the jar by the window. But even that seems distant now. Your mind is already wandering ahead, through the possibilities, the improvements, the little miracles that might come of this day if the gears decide to be kind. You move toward the window and open it slightly. A breath of cold air seeps in, carrying with it the smell of coal smoke and something sweeter, perhaps from the bakery 2 streets over. The fog curls inward, soft and pale, drifting lazily through the room. It touches the brass fittings, makes the lamplight shimmer. You stand there for a while, hands on the sill, watching the first pale figures of the morning shuffle through the mist below. There's the milkman, his horse steaming gently in the chill. A boy runs by with newspapers under his arm, and beyond them, a row of women waiting at the pump, their laughter bright against the dull grey. All of them moving with purpose, all part of the machinery of the day. You close the window and return to your workbench. A small ticking sound catches your ear, faint but steady. You lean closer. The valve trembles. The piston moves again, smoother this time, as though gathering courage. The sound fills the room, a quiet, rhythmic ch-ch-ch, almost like breathing. Your heart lifts. You steady the machine, tighten one last screw, and it hums a little louder. A soft pulse of air rises from its vents, rustling the papers scattered across the table. It's working, in its own strange way. Not quite as you intended, but alive nonetheless. You smile, a small private smile that no one will see. For a while, you simply listen. The machine's quiet rhythm merges with the rain beginning outside. A fine drizzle that taps gently against the window pane. The world feels suspended between invention and dream. You think perhaps this is what it means to create, to build something that doesn't yet understand what it is, but still insists on moving forward. You remove your spectacles, rub the bridge of your nose, and lean back in your chair. The ceiling above is cracked, faintly stained from years of lamp smoke. You trace one of the cracks with your eyes. It curves like a river, splitting and wandering until it disappears into shadow. Somewhere beneath the floor, you hear a neighbour's radio, one of the new battery-powered ones, faintly humming a waltz. You picture them downstairs, sipping tea, unaware of the tiny miracle ticking just above their heads. The warmth of the lamp begins to soften the air. You close your eyes for a moment, and in that half-sleeping quiet, your mind drifts. You imagine your contraption grown to full size, mounted on a platform of brass and oak, hissing and breathing like a living thing. Perhaps it powers a carriage, or spins a wheel that churns air into motion. Perhaps one day it lights an entire street. You open your eyes again. The fog has thinned, the city is stirring. Somewhere in the distance, a factory whistle calls, long and low, a signal that the day has begun. You reach for your coat, brushing dust from its sleeves. The machine continues its faint rhythm behind you, steady and patient, as though promising it will still be there when you return. You pause at the door, hand on the latch, and glance back once more at the workshop, at the gears, the tools, the flickering lamp. Everything seems caught between light and shadow, between the world as it is and the one it might yet become. Then, quietly, you step out into the steam and the morning fog. The air is cool and heavy, the city a blur of silhouettes and distant sounds, hooves, bells, voices, and the steady heartbeat of industry. You breathe it in, every ounce of soot and possibility, and begin to walk toward the day that waits to be invented. The fog follows you home like a loyal ghost. By the time you climb the narrow stairs to your attic, its breath still lingers on your coat, damp and faintly metallic. The door creaks open, with the familiar sound of wood giving way to warmth. The scent of oil and solder greets you, soft and comforting, as though the room itself is pleased to see you return. You step inside and set your tools on the table. The faint ticking from the morning contraption still fills the room, patient, rhythmic, steady as a metronome, keeping time for no one in particular. The glow of the oil lamp catches the curve of its brass frame, now cool to the touch, the air around it faintly sweet with burned lubricant. You unbutton your coat and hang it on the nail by the window, beside the small blueprint pinned there. The page has yellowed at the edges. The ink is beginning to fade, but the lines remain, crisp, deliberate, drawn with a kind of faith that has yet to waver. The attic hums faintly, with the low murmur of life. Every shelf, every table corner, is crowded with half-born ideas. A clock that counts in heartbeats, a kettle that whistles two tones in harmony, a tin bird whose wings tremble when the air turns warm. You move carefully among them, mindful of the parts that cling to your boots, of the wires that coil like sleeping snakes. On the far wall, beside the window, sits the great wooden cabinet that you built yourself from scrap. It houses the finer tools, tweezers, miniature saws, the brass compass with a cracked glass lid. You open it now, its hinges squealing softly, and select a file worn smooth from years of use. The handle fits perfectly in your hand. It always has. You set to work with slow precision. The sound of metal being smoothed fills the air, a long, steady whisper, like sand dragged across stone. Tiny sparks glint in the lamplight, dancing and dying in silence. Every motion is deliberate, almost ritual. The world outside might be rushing toward modernity, but in here time seems to obey your hands alone. The floor beneath you is uneven, its boards groaning with every shift of weight. From below, faint noises drift up. A kettle whistling in someone's kitchen, a baby crying, a carriage rumbling past the corner. The city hums through the cracks, yet your little workshop floats apart from it, a pocket of quiet in an age of engines. You pause for a moment to wipe your brow, your sleeve leaving a smudge of grease on your temple. The light flickers as the oil settles. Shadows ripple across the ceiling, long, soft shapes that resemble the movement of clock hands caught in a slow dream. You turn to the clock on the mantel. Its hands have stopped again. The mechanism inside is temperamental, designed more out of affection than necessity. You built it during a winter when the cold was unkind, when you needed something to occupy your evenings. It ticks faithfully for a few days, then rests for a few more, as if insisting that time itself requires sleep. You lift it gently, open the back, and adjust the spring. The tiny gears tremble, catching the light in sudden gleams of gold. The scent of brass and oil mingles in the air, sharp, sweet, and strangely soothing. The tick resumes, soft but confident, and you set the clock down again. The sound folds neatly into the symphony of your workshop. The hiss of the lamp, the faint whir of your air-driven engine, the low hum of something unnamed behind your thoughts. You find yourself smiling. There's a rhythm to all of it, not the rhythm of the factories or the streets, but one more human, more uncertain. You wonder if perhaps invention isn't about control at all, but about listening to what the metal wants to be. The window pane trembles faintly as a gust of wind slides past. Outside, the city has awakened fully. The fog is thinning now, rising in pale ribbons above the chimneys. You can hear the clatter of hooves on stone, the hiss of steam from a distant train. Somewhere, a church bell rings, a sound that feels both far away and impossibly near. You turn back to your desk. A small gear lies waiting there, no larger than a coin, cut from brass so thin it almost sings when you touch it. You place it carefully into a new frame, a skeleton of cogs and rods that might, in time, resemble a clockwork mouse. You tighten a screw, adjust a spring, and breathe out slowly. The air seems to pulse in rhythm with the lamp's flame. The mouse is a whim, of course, a thing made only for the joy of seeing motion born from stillness. Yet even as you work, you feel the old tug of curiosity. What if it could remember its path? What if it could scurry back to its starting point, as though pulled by some invisible memory? You reach for your sketchbook, draw a quick line, a spiral, a note beside it. Return mechanism, test with magnet coil. The clock ticks on. The room feels alive. You shift again, flexing your fingers, the joints stiff from cold and work. The oil lamp throws its glow farther now, spilling light across the wooden beams. Dust drifts lazily through it, golden motes suspended in air, like the slow dance of thought itself. Somewhere within that haze, you begin to see shapes, not real ones perhaps, but possibilities. Machines that move like animals, lamps that breathe with the pulse of a heartbeat, tiny engines that whisper to one another. Through the walls, the mind of an inventor is rarely still. Even in silence, it hums, sketching futures in the air. You reach for your tea, now cold, and take a sip anyway. The bitterness feels grounding. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the faint clicking of the clockwork mouse as it shifts under your palm. Hesitant, alive, waiting. When you open them again, the world has taken on a softer hue. The light through the window is warmer now, touched with amber, hinting that afternoon has slipped quietly into being. The fog has burned away, revealing rooftops and wires and laundry strung between buildings like pale sails. You set the mouse gently on the table, wind it once, and release. It twitches, stumbles forward, then stops, one paw raised mid-motion. You can't help but laugh quietly. Even in failure, it has a kind of grace. You kneel beside it, adjust a spring with the tip of your screwdriver, and whisper something you don't expect it to hear. The mouse jerks again, this time rolling forward in a trembling line before spinning in a perfect circle. The motion startles you enough to spill a few screws from the bench. You watch them bounce and scatter across the floor, catching the light like tiny sparks. For a moment, you let yourself imagine, just imagine, that the little creature might one day scurry down the stairs, cross the street, and vanish into the bustle of London. A machine lost among men, searching for the meaning of its own invention. The thought makes you strangely content. You sit back, resting your elbows on your knees. The air in the workshop has grown thick with the smell of oil and dust and faint heat from the lamp. The sound of your machine fills it, steady, alive, imperfect. Outside, the bells mark the passing of another hour. Somewhere below, a voice calls out, perhaps the baker, perhaps a child. The city never stops, but you are not in any hurry to join it. You look once more at your tiny clockwork creature, still spinning softly in place, and then to the half-finished diagrams that litter your desk. There are always more ideas waiting, quiet, patient, eager for breath. You reach for your pen, dip it into ink, and draw the first line of another design. The hum deepens, the gears turn, and the workshop, with all its stubborn screws and dreaming machines, begins to breathe again. The afternoon light has mellowed into gold, and the hum of your workshop has softened to a comfortable stillness. The clockwork mouse rests on its side, its final spin having carried it into the shadow. Beneath a stool, the scent of warm metal lingers, mingling with the faint sweetness of varnish and dust. The air is still, except for the quiet creak of the beams above and the faraway murmur of voices drifting through an open window somewhere down the lane. A soft knock breaks the calm, polite, measured, and unmistakably deliberate. You set your tools aside, brush the brass filings from your sleeves, and descend the narrow stairs that lead to the front door. Each step groans beneath your boots, carrying with it the scent of old timber and time. When you open the door, the fog has nearly vanished, leaving behind a pale afternoon sky and the faint scent of wet coal. Standing there, hat in hand, is Mr. Penumbra. His long grey coat flutters faintly in the breeze, and his round spectacles glint like small moons in the light. His fingers, stained with the familiar shade of indigo ink, clutch a parcel wrapped in brown paper and tied with fraying string. "Good afternoon," he says, voice soft as a turning page. "I've brought you something that might keep your mind busy." You step aside to let him in, and the scent of paper and pipe tobacco follows him, like an invisible cloak. He moves slowly, with the patient dignity of a man who has spent his life surrounded by fragile things. His shoes squeak faintly against the floorboards as he climbs the short stair to your workshop. "Still the same smell," he remarks with quiet amusement, setting the parcel down on your workbench. "Oil, copper, and a hint of burned ambition." You can't help but smile. "The perfume of progress," you say, and he chuckles, his laugh like a book closing gently. The kettle sits by the hearth, half full. You strike a match and set it to boil. As the flame catches, a faint hiss fills the air, mingling with the gentle ticking of your many clocks. Mr. Penumbra takes a seat by the window, his gaze wandering among your scattered inventions, the little engines, the glass jars filled with screws and gears, the brass skeleton of the air-driven motor that still refuses to behave. He leans forward, squinting through his spectacles. "Still chasing the impossible?" he asks. You shrug, a slow gesture that carries equal parts pride and fatigue. "It's the only thing worth chasing." The kettle begins to hum. You pour 2 cups of tea, pale and fragrant, the colour of wet parchment, and hand one to him. His fingers tremble slightly as they close around the porcelain, leaving faint crescents of ink on the handle. He sips, sighs, and unwraps the parcel with careful precision. The paper parts like soft fabric, revealing a book bound in cracked leather, its spine faded to the colour of smoke. The gold lettering, though worn, still glimmers faintly, on the principles and prospects of pneumatic mechanisms. You trace the cover with your thumb. "Pneumatic marvels," you murmur. "You did say you'd find me something worth losing sleep over." Mr. Penumbra's eyes twinkle. It was buried behind a volume on hydraulic organs and a most unconvincing treatise about perpetual motion. I thought of you immediately. You open the book, its pages whispering softly as they turn. The diagrams are delicate, sketches of cylinders, bellows, and tubes annotated in precise copperplate. You can almost feel the enthusiasm of the unknown author, long gone, but still murmuring from the page. "Air," you say softly, "invisible, obedient, and utterly unreliable." Mr. Penumbra chuckles again, blowing on his tea. "So, rather like people then." You sit opposite him, the books spread open between you. The light from the window drifts across the page, illuminating a drawing of a winged machine. All rods and feathers of tin, the artist has imagined a man lifted gently above the rooftops, his coat billowing behind him, his face serene in the wind. You stare at it for a long time, the faint hum of the workshop wrapping around the two of you like a shared dream. "Do you suppose," you begin, "that we'll ever truly fly, not with balloons or engines, but with wings of our own making?" Mr. Penumbra takes another sip, eyes following the lines of the drawing. "Perhaps not wings as we imagine them," he says, "but I think the desire to rise above the street, that's what keeps you people awake at night, inventors, dreamers, readers, all the same species, really." You smile, though your mind has already begun to wander, tracing invisible mechanisms, gears turning, air compressed, motion captured. You can almost hear the faint rush of wind through valves, the sigh of pressure released at just the right moment. The clock on the mantel ticks a little louder. The air seems to thicken with possibility. Mr. Penumbra watches you with the calm of a man who has seen many such moments. "You remind me," he says, "of a watchmaker I once knew. Spent 15 years designing a clock that would run forever. He died the day before it stopped." You glance up from the book, unsure whether to laugh or frown. He shrugs, setting his cup down with a soft clink. There's a certain poetry in futility. It's what gives our efforts their charm. You lean back in your chair, gazing out through the workshop window. The light has shifted again, softer now, almost tender. Dust motes drift lazily in the beam, and beyond the glass the rooftops glow in pale amber. Somewhere, a bell tolls the half hour. Mr. Penumbra stands, his joints creaking like old hinges. He moves toward the shelves, examining a curious assortment of objects. The tin bird, the unfinished mouse, the strange slanted engine. His fingers trail lightly over each one, leaving faint smudges of ink. The tea has cooled by the time he returns to his seat. He pulls a folded sheet of paper from his coat pocket and smooths it carefully across the table. On it is a newspaper clipping, an advertisement for a demonstration at the Royal Institute. Professor Aldwych presents the self-writing pen demonstration of pneumatic genius. You tilt your head. Self-writing? Mr. Penumbra nods. They say it composes letters faster than the mind can think them. Dangerous, then? Or revolutionary, he says, eyes glinting behind the lenses. One must decide which side of history one wishes to stand on. You run your finger along the edge of the clipping, then glance again at the book. The drawings seem to shift in the dimming light, the gears breathing, the valves pulsing faintly, as though the very idea of invention carries its own quiet heartbeat. Mr. Penumbra watches you fall into that familiar silence, the one that means the machinery of your imagination has begun to turn. He smiles softly, adjusts his coat, and finishes the last sip of his tea. When he finally stands to leave, the light has deepened into dusk. The room glows with a soft amber warmth, the kind that settles behind the eyes and stays there long after you walk him to the door. The air outside is cool again, smelling faintly of smoke and rain on iron. As he steps down into the street, he pauses, tapping the book under his arm. "Promise me one thing," he says. "Whatever you build next, make sure it behaves itself." You nod, watching as he disappears into the quiet evening, his coat fluttering like a page in the wind. When you close the door, the room seems larger somehow, filled with echoes of his laughter. The faint rustle of paper, the soft hiss of cooling metal. You return to your desk, open the book once more, and trace the lines of the pneumatic wing with the tip of your finger. Outside, the lamps are being lit one by one, their light trembling in the gathering mist. Inside, the flame of your oil lamp catches again, steady and sure. The city hums beyond the glass, and you sit in its quiet heart, surrounded by gears and dreams, the air thick with the scent of tea and ink, and something that feels very much like possibility. The morning unfolds like a slow exhalation, the kind that carries soot and sunlight in equal measure. You descend from your attic workshop with the faint clink of your pocket watch marking the rhythm of your steps. The streets of London wait below, cobbled veins pulsing with life, invention, and an untamable sense of motion. As the door closes softly behind you, a thin plume of steam drifts past your shoulder, and for a moment it feels as though the entire city breathes with you. The air outside is damp, fragrant with the mingled perfumes of coal smoke, wet stone, and freshly baked bread from the corner bakery that opens before dawn. You tighten your coat and begin your walk, cane in hand, though it is more for habit than need. The street hums faintly already, a symphony of hammer taps, carriage wheels, and faraway whistles. It is a sound that feels alive, mechanical, yet strangely human, as though London itself is forever exhaling inventions into the cold air. You pass a line of chimney sweeps trudging by, their faces grey with soot, their voices young but tired. Behind them, a cart creaks by, piled with scrap metal and broken clocks, all destined to be reborn as something new in the hands of clever men. Somewhere nearby, a street organ begins to play, its tune faint and wheezing, the notes tumbling unevenly through the mist. The melody is old, familiar, One of those tunes that seems to belong to no one, yet to everyone who has ever walked these cobbles. A toy seller stands at the edge of the lane, his table crowded with wooden birds, spinning tops, and tiny automata that twitch their arms when he winds them. Children gather round, wide-eyed, their laughter rising like flocks of sparrows. You stop to watch a small brass beetle crawl across the tabletop, its legs clicking faintly as it scurries in uncertain circles. The toy seller glances at you and smiles a knowing smile, the kind shared between craftsmen who recognize one another by instinct. "Clockwork, sir," he murmurs, voice low and warm, almost lifelike, isn't it? You nod. The beetle's movements are imperfect, endearing in their flaw, as if it's trying to remember what it means to be alive. You ask about the mechanism, and the man explains in broken sentences. Gesturing with his calloused hands, he speaks of springs wound too tightly, of brass that bends in the damp air, of how imagination often moves faster than metal ever can. There's a gentle melancholy in his tone, the kind that inventors share when they realize their creations never quite do what they dreamt they would. You leave a few coins on the table and continue your walk, tucking the tiny beetle into your pocket as you go. It feels like a good omen, a little fragment of London's ceaseless curiosity. The street narrows ahead, funneling into what locals call the Street of Thousand Whistles. It is not its real name, no map bears it, but it might as well be. Every building here hides a workshop, and every workshop hums, ticks, buzzes or sings. Steam leaks from half-open shutters. Sparks blink in the dim air like fireflies. Somewhere, a bell rings out of tune, followed by laughter, muffled behind wooden doors. The entire street feels like the inside of a single great engine, alive with hundreds of tiny hearts beating in concert. You walk slowly, listening. Each sound tells a story. From one doorway comes the rhythmic chuff of a miniature steam engine, puffing like a satisfied cat. From another, the sharp click of scissors and the faint smell of varnish, a toy maker at work. Deeper still, a metallic whine that could only belong to an inventor testing something new, something still unsure of itself. You pause beside an open window where a young man is tinkering with a bird cage that seems to sing without a bird. He doesn't notice you, lost in the small miracle of his creation. Further along, a blacksmith's forge roars with the confidence of the old world. Sparks rain upon the street as iron meets iron. And across from him, a chemist arranges glass bottles filled with liquids of impossible colour, aquamarine, violet, amber like trapped sunlight. The contrast between soot and science, between hammers and glass, feels like the essence of the age itself. A world straddling the line between muscle and mind. The fog thickens for a while, wrapping the lane in pale silence. You walk through it slowly, your footsteps echoing faintly, your breath mingling with the smoke that never seems to rest. When the mist parts again, you find yourself before a shop with no sign. Its windows are cluttered with curiosities, tin birds, paper kites, small telescopes, and something that looks suspiciously like a self-stirring teacup. The door creaks as you step inside. The smell of oil and old books greets you like an old friend. Shelves crowd every wall, stacked with tools, diagrams, and inventions that seem halfway between dreams and jokes. A small bell dings faintly overhead. Behind the counter, a man in a waistcoat peers up from a tangle of wires. His spectacles perch precariously on the bridge of his nose. "Good morning," he says, though the light suggests it is still barely dawn. You exchange pleasantries, then your eyes drift to the counter, where a peculiar device sits. A box of polished wood with a small brass funnel and a series of buttons labelled in careful handwriting. Laugh, sigh, whisper, cough, you ask what it does. He smiles, half proud, half sheepish. "It records the sounds of the street," he says, or tries to. The whistles, the footsteps, the rumble of carriages. I call it the echo keeper. It doesn't quite work yet. You listen as he explains, his voice steady, filled with that quiet devotion only inventors possess. The idea is beautiful, capturing London's living sound before it fades into memory. You press one of the buttons and hear a faint hiss, a ghostly breath that could almost be laughter. You can't tell whether it's real or your imagination, but it feels sacred somehow, as if you've just heard the city's soul whisper back. You thank him and step out again into the growing light. The fog has begun to lift, revealing rooftops and smokestacks gilded by the morning sun. Somewhere behind you, a whistle shrieks from a factory, followed by a chorus of smaller ones. Kettle whistles, toy whistles, steam whistles, all calling at once. It is a strange mechanical chorus that rises and falls with uncanny rhythm. And as you walk, you realize it is not chaos at all, but harmony. The harmony of ambition, of endless trial and error, of 1,000 small hopes puffing white clouds into the sky. Children chase each other down the lane, their laughter tangled with the hiss of steam. A newsboy shouts about a new invention that promises to replace horses with engines. A woman opens her shutters, the scent of soap spilling into the air. And for a moment, standing in that street of whistles, gears and fog, you feel utterly content. A single thread in a vast tapestry of restless creation. You turn a corner and find yourself by the river, where the Thames glimmers beneath a pale haze. Barges glide slowly past, their decks stacked with barrels and coal. The water smells faintly metallic, like the breath of a great machine. You pause there, gazing at the reflection of the city, all those chimneys and domes, their outlines rippling gently. It strikes you how fragile it all is, how each building, each invention, each dream depends on the next. 1,000 contraptions holding one another up in delicate balance. The thought comforts you. You slip the small brass beetle from your pocket and wind it once more. It clicks to life and scuttles along the stone ledge, its tiny legs moving in perfect rhythm with the city's distant pulse. You watch it for a while, smiling faintly before picking it up again and turning back toward your workshop. The day hums on. The whistles fade behind you, but the feeling remains, that warm hum beneath the noise, the quiet knowing that the city and you are made of the same curious heart, both dreamers, both builders, both alive with the stubborn hope that something small, something clever, might one day change everything. And so you walk, coat fluttering in the soft morning breeze, toward the attic where your own unfinished dreams wait, gears still turning quietly in the endless murmur of invention. The door closes behind you with a soft thud, sealing away the chatter of the street and the music of whistles that still lingers faintly in your ears. The quiet that follows is different, not silence exactly, but the kind that hums beneath thought, filled with tiny creaks of wood, the faint ticking of clocks, and the whisper of air slipping through old window frames. Your little attic feels almost alive. The smell of lamp oil greets you like an old companion, mingling with varnish, warm brass, and a faint trace of singed cloth from some long-forgotten experiment. You hang your coats by the door and cross the uneven floorboards toward your workbench. Light filters through the small, soot-smudged window, falling in narrow stripes across the clutter. Copper pipes, glass jars, bundles of wires, screws arranged in small islands of organized chaos. You've told yourself countless times that you will tidy it all someday, but somehow disorder feels like part of the process, the natural geography of creation. Your latest contraption rests at the center of it all, waiting like a patient animal. A half-finished mechanism, brass ribs exposed, wires coiled like veins beneath a shell of polished wood. You place a hand on it as if greeting an old friend, your fingers brushing the cool surface. Beneath the smell of metal and oil, there is something tender here, a faint echo of hope, perhaps, or of stubbornness disguised as purpose. You light the small oil lamp that sits beside the desk, the flame flickers, steadying into a warm glow that paints everything in shades of amber. Shadows stretch across the walls, mingling with the soft smoke, curling toward the ceiling. You can almost feel the pulse of the workshop returning, as though the place has been waiting for you. A kettle hums quietly on the small iron stove in the corner. You pour yourself a cup of tea, weak, slightly bitter, the kind that tastes faintly of tin, and set it beside your tools. You sip, watching a curl of steam rise and vanish, thinking about the city below your window. You can still hear its distant breath, the rhythmic hiss of engines, the chatter of hooves on cobblestones, the occasional metallic clatter carried up by the wind. London never truly sleeps. It only shifts from one kind of waking to another. You turn back to your invention and pick up a small wrench. The brass casing reflects your lamp's glow as you adjust a valve with careful fingers. A soft hiss escapes, a sputter, a click, then silence. You murmur encouragement, half in jest, as if the machine could hear you. "Come on, old friend," you whisper. "You were alive yesterday." A faint tremor stirs, a puff of steam escapes like a sigh. The gears twitch uncertainly, then stop again. You exhale, amused more than disappointed. Every experiment has its moods. Some mornings they wake up eager, others prefer to dream a little longer. You lean back on your stool and glance around the room. There's a comforting familiarity in every detail. The stack of old sketches curling at the edges, the faded blueprints pinned to the wall, with nails bent from overuse, the glass jar of brass screws that glint like coins in the lamplight. Each object carries a small story, a failure, a lesson, a moment of discovery that seemed trivial at the time, but led somewhere unexpected. You reach for your notebook, its leather cover soft, from years of handling. The pages are filled with loops of ink, diagrams half erased and rewritten, ideas that once seemed revolutionary and now read like charming nonsense. "Automatic tea pourer," one page declares confidently. "Self-cooling hat," says another. A whole section devoted to something labelled "mechanical bird," complete with notes about wing curvature and spring tension. You smile at your own audacity, the kind of optimism that makes a person believe they can rival nature with clockwork. You dip your pen in ink and jot a few thoughts about the morning's adjustments. The nib scratches softly, a sound almost soothing in its rhythm. "Pressure uneven. Adjust spring tension," you write. Then, after a pause, still hopeful. Outside, the daylight shifts toward gold. Through the window, rooftops glisten faintly, their chimneys breathing small clouds into the pale sky. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, not quite on the hour, its sound softened by fog. The rhythm of your pen matches it, steady, unhurried. You realize how much you love this part, the quiet hours when imagination hums gently and the world seems to lean close to listen. You rise to fetch another tool, stepping carefully around a pile of wood shavings and a forgotten coil of wire. On the shelf above your workbench sits a collection of oddities. Glass bottles filled with coloured liquids, a small clock missing its hands, and a curious metal orb that once promised perpetual motion, but now serves as a paperweight. You take it in hand, feeling its cool weight. It never worked, of course, but it looked like it might, and sometimes that is nearly as good. The kettle whistles softly again. You refill your cup and lean against the counter, watching the light grow brighter through the window. The warmth of the tea seeps through your fingers. You think of the people you saw that morning, the toy seller's smile, the young inventor with his singing birdcage, the old man and his echo keeper, each of them driven by some spark that refuses to die, no matter how small or foolish it may seem. The city feels like a vast engine, and you, a single cog that happens to love turning. You return to your bench and adjust the final gear. A small twist here, a dab of oil there, the motions so familiar they no longer require thought. You pause to inhale deeply. The scent of oil, metal, and warm wood fills your lungs, grounding you in the moment. It smells like possibility, like patience, like the quiet certainty that even failure, handled with care, can become a kind of progress. You wind the machine once more, the spring inside tightens with a delicate click. You release it slowly, watching the gears begin to turn. There, a tremor, a hum, a flicker of life. The mechanism sputters, exhales a thin wisp of steam, and begins to move. Slowly at first, then with confidence. You watch, hands resting lightly on the edge of the table, as it performs its small miracle, a rhythm steady and sure, like a heartbeat rediscovered. It isn't perfect. A valve leaks slightly. One gear turns half a beat behind the rest. But it works. The sound it makes is strangely musical, a series of ticks and puffs that fill the room with quiet triumph. You laugh under your breath, a sound somewhere between amusement and awe. You let it run for a while, simply listening. The faint hiss of steam blends with the tick of clocks and the sigh of the lamp. It feels less like a machine and more like a companion, a fellow traveller in the endless pursuit of the almost possible. You imagine, just for a moment, what London might look like if every dream in every workshop truly worked. A city alive not just with whistles and engines, but with laughter powered by invention, with kindness made mechanical, with optimism that smells faintly of oil. As the contraption slows to a stop, you place your hand upon it again, grateful. It cools beneath your touch, small puffs of warmth still rising from its vents. You extinguish the lamp, the faint scent of smoke curling upward like the end of a thought. The workshop dims, the colours softening into grey-blue twilight. Outside, the sounds of the city drift upward. Carriages, footsteps, a whistle far away. You stand for a while at the window, watching the fog gather again along the rooftops. The world beyond seems vast and tender, full of motion and uncertainty. You breathe it in, the air, the oil, the optimism, and in that quiet, you feel something steady inside you. A simple faith in the usefulness of trying, a belief that even small sparks can outlast the dark. And as night begins to fold over the city, your little workshop hums softly once more, the gears cooling, the ink drying, and the faint perfume of invention lingering. Warm, metallic, and sweet with possibility, the morning arrives gently, as if the light itself were being careful not to disturb the delicate order of your workshop. A soft drizzle taps against the window panes, turning the glass to rippled silver. The scent of damp wood and yesterday's lamp oil lingers in the air, mixing with the faint metallic sweetness that clings to your tools. You stir from your chair slowly, your back protesting, your thoughts still wrapped around the memory of that small triumph, the way your contraption hummed, however briefly, like something alive. The city below your window feels quieter than usual, subdued beneath the grey sky. Chimneys exhale slow, thoughtful plumes, and the streets glisten faintly with the sheen of rain. The bells of St. Martin's strike 8, soft, deliberate notes that hang in the mist like the heartbeat of the city. You set your teacup beside a pile of sketches, adjust your waistcoat absently, and glance at the small brass clock on your shelf. It ticks in gentle defiance of all your theories about perpetual motion. Then from somewhere downstairs comes the sound of a knock. Not hurried but dignified, the sort of knock that carries its own sense of self-importance. You blink momentarily unsure whether you imagined it. Another follows, firmer this time. You sigh softly, brush the dust from your cuffs, and descend the narrow stairs that creak beneath your weight like old timbers on a ship. At the door stand 3 gentlemen, each one dressed in dark coats that gleam faintly with rain. Their hats are perfectly round, their shoes perfectly polished, their expressions perfectly composed. They are, unmistakably, men of institutions, of committees and minutes, of memoranda written in neat, unyielding script. "Good morning," says the tallest of them, his moustache neat enough to suggest both discipline and disapproval. "We are from the Society of Practical Engineers. He pronounces the name with the weight of a title carved in marble. You offer a small bow of greeting, stepping aside to let them in. They remove their hats, each with the same mechanical precision, and step cautiously into your workshop. The room seems to absorb their presence with curiosity, the smell of wet wool mingling with that of brass and varnish. For a long moment, none of them speak. Their eyes wander from shelf to shelf, from gears to wires, from the faintly smoking kettle on the stove to the array of unfinished mechanisms strewn across your table. "It's rather lively in here," one of them murmurs. You smile faintly, unsure whether it was meant as a compliment. They begin to move about, examining your work with polite bewilderment, bending slightly to peer at a clockwork model of a fish, tilting their heads at a brass cylinder that hisses softly when touched. You can almost see their minds working, cataloguing, judging, perhaps even calculating how best to describe this strange attic of dreams in their next report. You offer tea because tea smooths the edges of all things. They accept, though one of them seems uncertain what to do with his cup once he receives it. Steam curls gently around their faces, softening the stiffness of their posture. You take your seat at the workbench, motioning for them to join you, and they do, cautiously, like explorers in a foreign land. "I've heard of your designs," the tall one begins, clearing his throat. "Flying machines, is it? Something about wings driven by air pressure." You nod, folding your hands together with quiet amusement. "Yes, a series of pneumatic chambers and feathered vanes, designed to mimic the motion of a bird's flight." "A bird," he repeats as though testing the word for structural weakness. "A mechanical one," you clarify gently. He exchanges glances with his companions. The shortest of the three leans forward slightly, peering at one of your sketches, a delicate drawing of a brass-winged figure suspended by thin rods and gears. "And this would fly?" he asks. "In theory," you say, your tone light, unbothered, "if the air could be coaxed to behave like water and pressure distributed evenly across the frame." The man nods, his brow furrowed. "In theory." The third, younger and quieter, speaks for the first time. "And the purpose, sir, if one might ask?" You pause at that. Purpose. Such a serious word. You glance at the half-finished contraption on the bench beside you, the one that sputtered to life just yesterday. "To see if it can be done," you say simply. "To make something move because it ought not to." The older men exchange polite smiles. The younger one tilts his head, thoughtful but uncertain. They sip their tea in silence for a moment. You can almost hear the clock ticking behind them, marking the slow rhythm of formality. Finally, the tall man clears his throat again. "It is admirable, of course," he says carefully, "to dream so boldly. But the society's focus, you understand, is on the practical application of engineering. Locomotives, bridges, engines for industry devices that serve the empire in measurable ways." You nod, though his words pass through you like a cool breeze. "Yes, of course," you reply softly. "But what is practical, in the end, if not the dream that begins it?" He blinks at that, not unkindly, just uncertain. The phrase hovers in the air between you like a wisp of steam, too light to grasp, too persistent to dismiss. The youngest of them glances around again, his eyes lingering on a small wooden box with wires coiled neatly atop it. "And this one?" he asks, almost eagerly. "What does it do?" You smile, setting your teacup down. "That," you say, "is an experiment in artificial conversation." The tall man frowns. "Conversation?" "Yes, it listens, or rather it tries to. It remembers vibrations, echoes fragments of voice. I hope one day it might reply." There is a pause long enough to hear the rain patter against the roof. "Remarkable," the younger man murmurs. "If it worked." "Oh, it doesn't," you say with a small laugh. "Not yet." The others smile, thin, cautious smiles, and set down their empty cups. One of them pulls a small notebook from his pocket and makes a brief note. The scratch of his pencil, soft but unmistakably final. They stand almost in unison, buttoning their coats with the air of men returning to the known world. "We do thank you for your time," the tall man says, extending his gloved hand. "Your enthusiasm is invigorating. We shall, of course, stay in touch." You shake his hand politely, the brass scent of your fingers mingling faintly with the scent of his leather gloves. "I look forward to it," you say, though you both know you won't. They make their way down the narrow stairs, their polished boots creaking against the worn step flaps. Through the window, you watch them emerge into the drizzle once more, huddled beneath a shared umbrella, their dark figures dissolving slowly into the grey. You turn back to the room, and suddenly it feels larger, emptier, as though their orderliness had drained some of the air from it. The ticking of the clock seems louder now, and the little machine on your bench emits a lonely hiss, as if disappointed it wasn't introduced. You move toward it, adjusting a valve, and whisper something half to yourself, half to the contraption. "We're impractical, I'm afraid, but we do our best," the machine answers, with a soft puff of steam. You smile and return to your stool, running your fingers along the edge of the blueprint the engineers had studied. The lines look different now, not less meaningful, but somehow freer, unburdened by approval. You pick up your pen again and draw a new curve across the page, following no formula, no rule, just instinct and a sense of rhythm. Outside, the drizzle deepens into rain, drumming softly against the window. The city blurs beyond it, roofs and chimneys melting into watercolour shades of grey and gold. Somewhere far away, a train whistle rises through the mist, long and low, like a sigh. You imagine the three engineers aboard it, their minds already turning toward ledgers, timetables, and steam efficiency. You wish them well. You wish them structure, order, progress, all the things that keep the world turning. But in this quiet room, surrounded by gears and sketches, you choose something else. The unmeasurable, the improbable, the beautiful foolishness that makes the practical possible. You adjust the lamp, the flame glowing brighter against the deepening gloom. The smell of oil returns, faint but reassuring, and the sound of the rain begins to sound less like falling and more like applause. You breathe in deeply, lift your pen once more, and begin to draw again, a line that curves upward this time, as though it might one day lift off the page entirely. The rain begins quietly, as if London itself were exhaling. It starts with a hesitant tapping, the faint percussion of droplets finding their rhythm upon the iron sheets above your workshop. You glance up from your desk, where a sketch lies half finished, lines curling like the thoughts that never fully land, the lamplight pools in the corners, trembling with each flicker of the wick. Outside, the world has turned to a muted blur, chimney stacks fading into the grey, rooftops glistening, carriages dissolving into mist. You set your pencil down, watching the graphite roll to the edge of the table and stop just before falling. That tiny moment of balance feels oddly familiar, the same precarious stillness that your inventions often teeter on, somewhere between triumph and collapse. The smell of oil, iron and tea leaves lingers in the air. The window pane hums faintly with the weight of the downpour, and you listen, not just to the rain, but to the rhythm it creates with the quiet ticking of your wall clock, 2 metronomes, one human and one natural, measuring the passage of a day that feels both endless and intimate. You rise slowly and walk toward the window. Your reflection stares back, weary eyes, soot along your sleeve, a faint smear of graphite across your thumb. The street below glistens like a vein of silver. Puddles bloom along the cobbles, gathering the city's light in trembling circles. A woman in a shawl hurries by with a paper parcel under her arm. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then retreats into silence. London, in the rain, feels almost kind. You return to your desk and draw the lamp closer. The faint hiss of the flame joins the rain's lullaby. A fresh page waits. You dip the nib into the inkwell, watching the surface ripple like a dark pool. Then, slowly, as if afraid to disturb the quiet, you begin to sketch. Not for purpose this time, not for recognition or approval, but because the motion itself feels necessary. The shape forms instinctively, a bird or perhaps a machine that wants to be one. Its wings are made of thin brass slats, its body hollow, its eyes nothing more than two screws placed where imagination says they should belong. It is fragile, impractical, impossible. And yet there's comfort in giving it form. The ink pools slightly where your hand hesitates. You rest your elbow on the table, listening again to the rain. Each drop sounds like a decision, falling, breaking, merging. You think of all the things you've tried to build, and all the ones that refuse to obey. You realise, with a strange calm, that failure too has its own kind of music. Behind you, the little stove sighs. A puff of steam escapes from the kettle. You forgot you'd left warming. You pour yourself another cup of tea, dark, strong, bitter, and the smell of it mingles with the scent of oil and varnish that clings to the room. For a moment you imagine the rain is speaking in Morse, dots and dashes on the roof. Some celestial telegram tapping out a message you'll never decode. The candlelight shivers again. You think about the men from the society, their polished shoes and polite laughter, how earnestly they listened, and how quickly they looked away. You could have been disheartened, perhaps even offended, but instead there is only the faint amusement that lingers now, softer with distance. They would never understand that invention is not about perfection. It's about persistence, about the quiet courage to keep shaping ideas that refuse to stay solid. A soft creak interrupts your thoughts. The workshop's rafters groan slightly with the damp, the old wood remembering years of winters, just like this one. You move toward a shelf, tracing your fingers along the spines of notebooks, volumes filled with diagrams, formulas, daydreams. Some pages hold equations you no longer recognize. Others contain sketches of devices that never came to be. Airships without engines, lenses that magnify too much, automata that collapsed before their first breath. You smile faintly at one, a drawing of a self-turning teacup. You can't quite recall what problem it was meant to solve. Perhaps it never needed to. As the night deepens, the rain grows steadier, heavier. The city begins to hum beneath it, a low, constant vibration, as if London were a machine itself, turning somewhere below the cobblestones. You imagine the entire metropolis as a great contraption, gears made of alleyways, pistons of steam, its pulse timed by the chime of clocks in drawing rooms and factories alike. You are merely one cog in that vast symphony, insignificant perhaps, but necessary in your own small way. The thought steadies you. You return to the desk once more and light a second candle. The shadows retreat, and your invention, your brass-winged, ink-born creature, catches the glow, its edges gilded in soft amber light, and you pick it up, feel its cool weight, and set it on the windowsill. Beyond the glass, the world is still rain. The tiny machine gleams, watching the storm, as if it might learn to fly from it. You sit again, folding your arms across the table, and close your eyes. The sound of rain on metal is steady now, hypnotic. You can almost hear the heartbeat of your workshop, the faint ticking of tools cooling down, the crackle of the stove, the sigh of steam. It feels alive, this space, alive in the way only a place built by hand and hope can be. You remember the first time you came here, years ago. The attic had been nothing more than dust and echoes. You'd carried your boxes of parts up those narrow stairs, one at a time, determined to carve out a little world of your own above the city. Now voici now. It is cluttered, chaotic, perfect. Every gear has its story, every stain on the wood a memory. The rain softens again. The sky outside is beginning to pale, the faintest suggestion of dawn behind the clouds. You realise you've been awake all night, sketching, thinking, listening, and yet you don't feel tired. There's a strange peace in this solitude, The knowledge that while the city dreams below, you are awake with your thoughts, your tools, and the steady rhythm of water against iron. You pick up your pencil again, tracing the outline of another impossible thing. Something that moves, something that hums, something that perhaps will never work at all. And that somehow is the point, because it isn't the success that keeps you here through the sleepless nights and endless rain. It's the quiet wonder of trying, of building for the sake of the question itself. Outside, the first bird dares to sing. Its voice is fragile against the storm, but it sings anyway. You look toward the window, smile faintly, and whisper to the little brass creature on the sill. Half to it, half to yourself someday. Then the rain falls softer still, a final applause upon the iron roof. The light outside fades early, swallowed by another London dusk. A faint mist curls through the streets, rising between chimneys and gas lamps, like a ghost that has nowhere else to go. Inside your workshop, the air holds that familiar heaviness after rain, damp wood, cooling iron, and something else, the quiet expectation of creation. You strike a match. Its hiss slices through the stillness, and the wick of your oil lamp catches with a small, trembling flame. It glows warm at first, then steadies, casting the walls in amber. Tools gleam faintly on the shelves. A dozen forgotten inventions sleep in the half-light. A pocket-sized water pump, a clock that refuses to tell time, a brass hand that once tried to write its own name. You hum to yourself, low and tuneless, as you clear a space on the table. The paper crackles under your hands. A new sketch waits, though you hardly look at it now. What matters tonight is not the drawing, but the sound, that delicate rising hum of energy as you twist copper wire around a small iron core. The wire gleams like the veins of some metallic creature. You pull it taut, winding it with care, the motion slow and deliberate. The air smells faintly sharp, metallic. As though the room is holding its breath in anticipation, you can hear the rain still dripping from the eaves, the occasional creak of the rafters, and beneath it all, the faint buzz of your own excitement. Somewhere in the corner, a clock chimes the hour, 7, perhaps 8. You've stopped keeping track. The lamp's flame trembles as a draft slips through the cracks of the window pane, and for a moment, the reflection of your own face flickers beside the coil eyes that have stared too long at schematics, hands that remember too much failure. Yet still, there's that restless glint of hope. You secure the final twist of the wire, then attach it to the small battery you've cobbled together from bits of zinc and copper, soaked in acid. A modest contraption, really, but you look at it as if it might change the world. And then, the faintest pulse, a flicker, barely perceptible at first, just a breath of light along the wire's edge. You lean closer, holding your breath. The glow strengthens, falters, then returns. A fragile shimmer, like dawn captured in miniature. You exhale softly, the way one might speak to a bird perched on their hand, afraid to startle it. The light grows, not bright, not steady, but alive enough to fill the room with a soft hum. The shadows on the walls shift and ripple. It's an imperfect success, yet it is success all the same. The scent of ozone fills the air, sharp and exhilarating. You smile faintly, watching the wire tremble under its own energy. The sound is delicate, like a whisper from the future, the promise of something greater just beyond reach. You imagine a day when this trembling spark might live inside every home, banishing the soot-stained glow of gaslight. The idea feels both absurd and inevitable. You sit back, folding your arms, listening to the coil's quiet vibration. It reminds you of a heartbeat, artificial, steady, but pulsing with potential. You find yourself imagining 1,000 rooms like this one, each lit not by flame, but by the breath of electricity. Children reading without straining their eyes, workers crafting through the night without the burn of oil smoke, streets alive with quiet, unending glow. You almost laugh at yourself. How the mind runs ahead of the hands. But isn't that the nature of invention? To dream faster than the world can catch up? The light sputters suddenly, falters and dies. A small puff of smoke curls upward, then fades into the ceiling. You sit still. The silence that follows, almost theatrical. A failure, perhaps. Yet it doesn't sting. It never really does anymore. Failure has become a kind of companion, one that knocks politely, enters without waiting, and takes a seat beside you while you think. You rise to open the window. The cool night air spills in, mingling with the scent of burnt metal. Below, the street glimmers with the reflection of distant lamps. The city hums faintly, 1,000 different engines of survival, all working in their own quiet ways. Carriage wheels roll through puddles, a violin drifts from an unseen window, and somewhere a factory whistle calls out like a lonely bird. You rest your hands on the sill and close your eyes. The damp air brushes your face. The rooftops seem to breathe. And in that moment you realize how alive everything is. Every machine, every human pulse, every spark. The world itself feels mechanical, and yet achingly human. Behind you, the coil still smokes faintly. The lamp flame wavers. You turn, studying the mess you've made, the tools scattered like fallen soldiers, the notes scribbled with half-formed thoughts, but there is beauty in this chaos. A living kind of order, if only you tilt your head and squint. You think of all the inventors scattered across the city, men in basements, women in back rooms, children tinkering with scraps of tin, each one whispering into the dark, testing, failing, trying again. The hum of their collective effort feels like something you can almost hear, a great chorus of persistence beneath the surface of London. You return to your desk and reach for a clean piece of wire. Your fingers are steady now. You begin again, winding it tighter this time, humming softly under your breath. There is a rhythm to it, the looping, the binding, the turning, a ritual of patience. The lamp flickers, as if approving. The window shivers with another gust of wind. Somewhere below, the street vendor calls out the last of his wares. "Hot pies, 2 pennies tie," his voice dissolving into the fog. You twist the wire into place and connect it once more. The battery hums faintly. The air shifts, a tension you can feel on your skin. And then, the light returns. This time it holds, a tiny trembling glow, alive in the palm of your creation. Not bright enough to see by, not steady enough to last, but real. You stare at it for a long time, the way a parent might watch a child's first breath. The glow reflects in your eyes, and for a moment the entire room feels illuminated. You lean back, letting out a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. Outside, the fog presses close against the glass. Curious. You whisper to the air, almost absently, if only they could see it. But perhaps it's better that they don't. Perhaps it's enough that it exists. Here, in this small room between you and the rain-stained night. The glow fades once more, slow and gentle. The air grows still again. You place the wire down carefully, as though setting something fragile to rest. Your tea has gone cold. The clock ticks on. You close your notebook, the faintest smile tracing your lips. And as you reach for the lamp to douse its flame, a stray spark dances across the coil. Just a flicker, but enough to make you pause. It lingers, glows faintly, and then dies into darkness. For a heartbeat, it feels as though the world itself had blinked. Then only silence, the scent of ozone, and the warmth of your own quiet wonder. You sit there a while longer, in that strange in-between place, where night gives way to thought, and thought gives birth to possibility. The city breathes beyond your window, and you, still humming softly, begin to sketch again. Somewhere in your mind, the future has already begun to glow. Night folds around London like a velvet curtain, soft and heavy with soot and rain. The last coal fires dim in their grates. The city exhales a long, tired breath, and the sky above glimmers faintly. Not with stars, but with the pale shimmer of industrial haze. You sit by your workbench still, long after the lamp has burned low, the coil from earlier resting in silence beside a sprawl of half-sketched wings. Your eyes ache, ink stains your fingers. Somewhere between thought and exhaustion, the line between invention and dreaming begins to blur. The room hums faintly, or perhaps it's only the echo of your own pulse, rhythmic and low, like a machine still turning after the fire has gone out. You close your eyes, and the floor beneath you softens into air. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, a shift in balance, the pull of gravity loosening. Your shoulders feel lighter. The smell of oil fades, replaced by something cool and clean, the scent of high air and distant rain. When you open your eyes again, the workshop has vanished. You stand beneath a sky of endless grey blue, faint light glimmering off sheets of metal and stretched canvas. Before you, your contraption, the dream you've drawn 100 times and never built, waits in perfect silence. Its frame is delicate as bone, its wings curved and gleaming like the inside of a shell. Brass rivets catch the light. A small propeller turns lazily at the back, as if sighing in anticipation. You reach out, your hand brushing the smooth canvas. It trembles faintly under your touch, alive in some strange way, a sleeping creature waiting to be coaxed into flight. You climb aboard. The seat is narrow, the levers strange beneath your fingers, yet everything feels inevitable, as if you've done this before 1,000 times in the corners of your mind. The straps tighten, the wind stirs, and the wings unfurl with a shiver that ripples through the air. The ground slips away. London opens beneath you like a map drawn in candlelight. The river glows faintly, coiling through the city like molten glass. Rooftops shimmer with the residue of rain. The great dome of St. Paul's rises solemn and silver through the fog. The wind lifts you higher, carrying the smell of smoke and iron, and the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers from some unseen garden. You glide in silence. Below, the city moves slowly, a living machine of endless motion. You see the lamplighters making their rounds, the flame of their poles flickering gold against the mist. You see a factory yard still glowing from the furnace within, sparks drifting upward like tiny stars that never quite reach the sky. You see trains sliding through the dark, like serpents of steel, their whistles echoing mournfully across the Thames. And then there are the people, so small from here, so distant. A carriage crossing a bridge, a woman closing shutters against the wind, a boy with a kite that tugs uselessly in the still air. You wonder if they would look up, if they would see you and think, "There, look, a man who has defied the ground." The thought makes you smile, not with pride but with quiet disbelief. You, of all people, a dreamer of screws and sketches, suspended above the empire's heart. The air grows colder as you climb. The fog begins to thin, revealing a faint band of moonlight overhead. Your machine hums softly, its brass joints sighing as if content. The wings cut cleanly through the mist, scattering droplets that catch the light like falling glass. For a long moment, the world feels impossibly still. Then from somewhere far below, a sound, the toll of a distant bell, deep and patient, counting time you no longer feel. The city seems to pause between its heartbeats. You glide past it all, past chimneys still breathing out smoke, past rooftops where cats prowl, past the faint echo of music from a tavern that never sleeps. It feels almost holy, this quiet. You lean forward, guiding the wings gently, and they respond like a thought given form. The current rises beneath you, warm and strong, and for a heartbeat you forget that such a thing could ever fail. The rooftops blur beneath your feet, and you are no longer a man at all, but an idea, weightless, impossible, and free. You pass above the clock tower, its face pale in the haze, and for a moment it seems to look back at you. The hour hand glints like a blade. You realize how small time feels from up here, how fragile the entire city, All its noise and ambition becomes a single exhalation, fleeting, beautiful. Gone in the span of a second's turning gear, you close your eyes again. The sound of the wings fades into something softer, a murmur of air through feathers, the creak of stretched fabric, the faint rhythm of your own heartbeat. You could stay here forever, suspended between invention and oblivion. But the dream, like all things, begins to change. The wind shifts, the hum falters, the machine trembles, its perfect rhythm stuttering like a candle, guttering in a draught. You feel the pull of gravity returning, gentle at first, then firmer, insistent. The city begins to rise toward you, its outlines sharpening, its rooftops growing close enough to touch. You don't panic. You simply watch, serene, as the air thickens and the light dims. The wings shudder, fold slightly, and the hum becomes a sigh, the sigh of an idea returning to earth. The rooftops blur past, and then a soft impact. Not the crash of destruction, but the landing of something meant to rest. You find yourself once again seated at your desk, the faint smell of oil and burnt copper filling the room. The lamp still burns low beside you, its light pooling across the half-drawn sketch of your flying machine. Your hands rest on the paper, the ink has smudged where your fingers lay. For a long while, you simply breathe, slow, steady, half awake. The dream clings to you like mist, refusing to fade. You rise and cross to the window. The night air presses cool against the glass. Below, the city glimmers faintly under its shroud of smoke and fog. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls softly. The clouds above the rooftops flash white for the briefest instant. A flicker of light that vanishes as quickly as it came. You wonder if electricity dreams too. You return to your desk, taking up your pencil once more. The wings on your paper seem to shift in the lamplight, as though yearning for air. You draw another line, slower this time, more careful. The pencil moves easily, guided by memory rather than thought. It no longer feels like design. It feels like recollection. Outside, London sleeps uneasily, its forges cooling, its gears still ticking in the dark. Inside, the rhythm of invention beats quietly on, patient as ever. You lean back, watching the lamplight quiver. A faint draught seeps through the cracks of the window, and the flame bends, golden and alive. You whisper something under your breath, not quite a prayer, not quite a promise, and let the pencil fall. The hum of the city fills the silence, and somewhere, far above the rooftops, a single dream continues to circle in the fog, waiting for dawn. The morning is quiet, though the city beyond your attic window hums with the low rumble of distant engines and the occasional clatter of carriage wheels over cobblestones. The air is thick with the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and the soot of chimneys, curling upward like ghosts that never fully vanish. You're at your workbench once more, surrounded by the scattered remnants of your previous experiments. Coils of wire, tiny springs, the bones of ideas that almost flew. Today, a new contraption waits. Its frame is slender, crafted from brass rods that gleam softly in the early light. Copper wiring snakes along its spine like veins, and small gears protrude like tiny teeth. You place it gently on the bench, adjusting its balance with care. The room smells faintly of lamp oil and varnish, a familiar perfume that always seems to accompany invention, whether it succeeds or falters. You pause to run your fingers along the brass fittings. They're cool under your touch, smooth yet unyielding, as if aware of the role they're about to play. You imagine the machine coming alive, the faint hiss of air, the click of gears finding harmony, the small miracle of movement that might, just might, lift it from stillness. And then you begin. A small spark flickers as you connect the wires. The gears hum faintly. The wings of your contraption quiver, as though caught between the desire to rise and the insistence of gravity. You hold your breath, listening to the gentle rhythm of the machine's awakening. For a moment it is beautiful. The tiny gears spin in harmony, the copper coils glow faintly, the whole piece vibrating with the quiet promise of success. You imagine it soaring, climbing over rooftops, drifting past church spires, carrying with it the weightless hope of countless hours spent in your attic. And then, a polite hiss, the wings tremble once, twice, then collapse inward. A wisp of smoke curls upward from the base, carrying with it the faint, acrid scent of electrical disappointment. The machine settles with a soft sigh, as though acknowledging its own inability to follow through on its ambition. You lean back in your chair and watch it for a long moment, the silence of the room wrapping around you. And then you laugh, quietly, gently, the kind of laugh that bubbles from the chest and rises without urgency. It is not a laugh of frustration nor of embarrassment, but of recognition. This too is part of creation. The contraption sits before you, inert yet dignified, its brass fittings gleaming in the soft lamplight. You brush a smear of soot from your sleeve and run your fingers over a gear that has stubbornly refused to turn. There is an intimacy in these failures, a language of trial and error that only you and the machine understand. You pick it up carefully, examining the small imperfections that prevented it from flight. A spring twisted the wrong way, a wire that was too short, a lever that did not align. Each flaw is a note in a quiet symphony of possibility, each one a lesson, whispered rather than shouted. The rain begins to tap at the window again, gentle and steady, a soft percussion that seems almost in time with your pulse. You set the contraption down and watch the droplets blur the world outside, the rooftops and chimneys melting into silver-grey watercolour. The city hums faintly, and somewhere in the distance, a factory whistle rises and falls like a sigh. You sip the tea that has gone cold, its bitter warmth grounding you in the reality of the workshop. The smoke from your failed experiment curls lazily toward the ceiling, dissolving into the shadows as if reluctant to vanish completely. You imagine the tiny machine thinking, in its own mechanical way, about what it could have been. And in that imagination, there is joy. You begin to disassemble it slowly, taking apart each piece with deliberate care. The brass fittings click softly against the wooden table. The gears roll over one another with quiet satisfaction, as if pleased to have been part of the experiment at all. Even in failure, there is a rhythm here, a music that is neither loud nor triumphant, but steady and reassuring. You pause to trace a finger along a sketch left open on the desk. The lines are careful but uncertain, the dreams of flight etched in graphite. You think of all the hours spent bending metal, twisting wire, imagining movement where none existed. You think of the mechanical birds that never soared, the self-writing pens that refused to write, the coils that hummed briefly and then fell silent. And yet none of this feels wasted, because failure is not an end. It is a companion, gentle and persistent, guiding you toward the next idea, the next sketch, the next improbable contraption. You realize softly that it carries its own kind of beauty, the beauty of curiosity, of persistence, of hands and mind working in harmony, even when the result refuses to cooperate. The sun shifts behind a cloud, spilling a pale light across the workshop. Shadows stretch long, mingling with the steam from the kettle and the faint haze of oil. You stand and move toward the window, feeling the cool glass beneath your palm. The city breathes beyond it, alive and unaware of the quiet triumphs and polite failures of a single inventor in a small attic. The machine sits patiently on the desk, as if waiting for you to return, and perhaps it will. Perhaps tomorrow it will move, or next week, or next year. And even if it never does, it has served its purpose in the rhythm of your work, to teach, to inspire, to remind you that the act of trying is itself worth the effort. You walk back to the desk and begin tidying the scattered tools. Each wrench, each coil, each gear finds its place. The room grows quieter with every motion, more ordered, yet retaining the warmth and clutter that speaks of life, lived in pursuit of curiosity. You glance once more at the failed contraption, and the corners of your mouth lift in a faint, private smile. Outside, the rain softens, shifting to a whisper as night deepens. You can hear the occasional carriage wheel clatter against the street, the muted calls of late vendors, the distant notes of a violin carried from a nearby alley. Everything feels connected: the city, the rain, the quiet pulse of your workshop, the small and stubborn heartbeat of your imagination. You sit again, picking up your pencil. The sketchbook opens easily. You draw another line, tentative at first, then bolder, following the rhythm of thought rather than expectation. The wings on the paper arc upward, defying gravity and graphite. You hum softly, the vibration echoing faintly off the walls. It is a gentle failure, yes, but it is alive. It is present. It is part of the long, intricate conversation you are having with the world. A conversation made of brass and wire, of ink and thought, of the quiet insistence to keep moving even when the machine refuses to rise. And as the lamp flickers, sending small shadows across the room, you feel a soft satisfaction settle in your chest. You realize that this is what invention is, in its truest form: the willingness to create, to try, to fail, and to find joy even in the polite hiss of smoke. You set your pencil down and lean back. The machine rests before you, inert yet dignified. The rain taps its final notes against the window, a lullaby for the restless, a reminder that even in stillness there is life. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the quiet wash over you. The workshop hums faintly with residual energy, the faint vibration of ambition lingering in the air, and you smile, soot smudged along your sleeves, heart light with the knowledge that tomorrow, or the day after, or the year hence, you will begin again. Failure is only the beginning of another possibility, and in that knowledge, the city, the rain, and your little workshop all feel just a little warmer, a little braver, a little alive. The morning air carries a hint of warmth, even beneath the usual London mist. You step out from your workshop, the cobbled streets slick from a night's rain, and begin the short walk toward the Crystal Palace. The world is waking slowly, vendors arranging their carts, horses stamping at the cobbles, the faint smoke of distant chimneys curling toward the sky. You feel a curious mix of excitement and calm, as if the city itself recognizes that today is not like other days. The palace rises before you, enormous and gleaming, its iron ribs stretching toward the clouds. Glass panes catch the weak sunlight, scattering it across the square in pale, trembling shards. The air smells faintly of oil and coal, mixed with the distant sweetness of flowers planted around the grounds, a reminder that even in a city of machines, nature insists on its presence. Inside, the halls open wide, and the sheer scale of it, the light, the glass, the rows upon rows of machines, feels almost holy. You step carefully, taking in the engines that hiss and clatter in measured rhythm, the telegraphs that click with urgent precision, the delicate mechanisms of mechanical looms producing endless patterned fabric. Each exhibit hums, buzzes, or whispers. It is a cathedral of ingenuity, a monument to curiosity, a place where invention is worshipped silently and with awe. You wander slowly, letting your eyes trace the intricate movements of gears and pulleys. The polished brass of a steam engine gleams under the skylights, and you imagine the engineer who crafted it, hands black with soot, brow furrowed, eyes bright with determination. You recognize the same spark in yourself, the stubborn belief that something impossible can be made real. Somewhere nearby, a small automaton plays a tune on a tiny keyboard. The notes are sweet and faint, carrying through the vast hall, mingling with the smell of oil, polished wood, and faint iron. You pause and watch it, fascinated. Its movements are precise, elegant, yet strangely alive. You remember the nights spent coaxing your own contraptions into motion, the hissing coils and trembling gears, the quiet thrill when something shifted just as you had imagined. You walk past a display of telegraphs, watching the levers move in disciplined rhythm. You imagine messages flying invisibly through the wires, letters travelling faster than horses or messengers, connecting people across miles. The thought delights you. So much of invention is about connection, about bridging the impossible gap between thought and action, distance and presence. And then you see it, a small corner exhibit, almost forgotten, yet impossibly familiar. It is a device that resembles one of your earliest sketches, a simple machine meant to move and record, yet never perfected. The brass is tarnished, the wires bent in ways that make you wince slightly, and yet you cannot help but smile. Someone somewhere thought enough of it to bring it here. It lives in its own imperfect way, alongside the grand engines and luminous looms. You wander further, past intricate clocks that strike the hour with elaborate fanfare, past machines that churn butter or churn ink with mechanical devotion. Your fingers itch to touch, to test, to feel the pulse of energy beneath the surface. You remind yourself that you are only a visitor, yet you feel an odd kinship with these inventions, as though your own restless mind resonates with theirs. The palace is vast, and the crowds ebb and flow like a gentle tide. You notice other dreamers, young men with ink-stained fingers, women with careful notebooks, children craning their necks to glimpse the workings of a steam engine. Their eyes reflect the same mixture of awe and curiosity that has carried you through years of sketches, failed experiments, and sleepless nights. In each one, you see the echo of your own obsession, the quiet madness that drives creation. You pause at a mechanical bird, its wings folding and unfolding with astonishing delicacy. You imagine it flying beyond the glass walls, above the rooftops, above the clouds. A small smile tugs at your lips. So much of invention is about yearning, about imagining what could be, even when the laws of physics or society insist otherwise. You remember your own sketches of brass wings, copper coils, and trembling propellers. You imagine them in flight, soaring above London, and for a fleeting moment, the mechanical bird seems to nod in silent agreement. Walking past rows of engines, you hear the faint hiss of steam and the rhythmic clank of pistons. You inhale slowly, letting the scent of hot metal and coal settle in your lungs. There is a strange comfort here among the calculated chaos of motion, the knowledge that people have always sought to bend the world to their imagination, that failure and brilliance walk hand in hand, quietly, with no need for applause. A group of visitors passes, their voices low with reverence. They marvel at the intricacy of a spinning loom, the elegance of a rotating gear, the precision of a clockwork figure. You feel a sense of camaraderie, even with strangers, because you recognize the same wonder that has carried you through sleepless nights. The palace is a mirror, reflecting not just machines, but the human heart, beating quietly beneath brass and iron. You linger near an enormous steam engine, tracing the polished pipes with your eyes. The sheer power of it, contained and disciplined, humbles you. And yet it is familiar. For all its scale, it is not unlike the small trembling machines you coax into motion in your attic. Each one, whether massive or miniature, is a testament to patience, persistence, and curiosity. The hall grows quieter as the afternoon wanes. Light shifts, scattering across the glass panes and illuminating dust motes that float lazily in the air. You take a slow breath, letting it fill your chest. The palace is no longer just a collection of inventions. It is a living museum of possibility, a cathedral of the imagination, where failures are as sacred as triumphs, and where every machine carries the whisper of a dreamer's hope. You pause at a simple gear mechanism, small and unassuming. You imagine the hands that turned it, the night spent bending and twisting metal to align perfectly with invisible forces. You remember the quiet satisfaction of coaxing your own contraptions into motion, and you realize that this is what drives every inventor. The intimate conversation between mind and material, the gentle persuasion of possibility. Outside, through the glass, London waits in silver-grey repose. The streets are slick with rain, chimneys breathe out smoke, and the hum of the city persists beneath the palace's delicate iron bones. You step closer to the glass and press your hand lightly against it. You can almost feel the pulse of the city, steady and enduring, carrying with it all the dreams of countless inventors. You turn back to the exhibits and let your eyes wander, tracing the movement of gears, the extension of levers, the folding of tiny wings. You see your own curiosity mirrored in the precision of others, in the persistence of machines that refuse to rest. You realize that failure and triumph are not opposites, but companions, walking quietly together through the halls of imagination. The day shifts slowly toward evening. The palace glows faintly as the sun dips low, casting pale golden streaks across the glass. Shadows stretch long, mingling with the rhythmic motion of the exhibits. You linger in the vast silence, savouring the delicate hum of industry and the faint echo of countless thoughts, all converging in this cathedral of invention. Finally, you step toward the exit. The sunlight catches on the glass once more, scattering across your vision in faint prisms. You pause, glancing back at the rows of machines, the small automator, the engines humming in gentle rhythm. For a heartbeat, it feels as if the palace itself breathes with you, as if it acknowledges the quiet persistence of your mind, the odd mixture of madness and method that has carried you through so many nights. You step outside. The city greets you gently, streets still damp, the air heavy with the scent of rain and coal. The palace stands behind you, vast, eternal, a silent witness to the dreams and failures of countless inventors. You breathe in the evening air and feel it settle into your chest, steady and calm. You walk slowly, letting your thoughts drift back to your workshop, to the coils and gears and sketches waiting there. You imagine them waiting patiently, knowing that your hands will return, that your mind will hum with ideas once more. And somewhere, in the quiet between street and sky, you recognize that the world itself is a vast machine. Each person, each invention, each failure and triumph, quietly turning together in time. The Crystal Palace fades behind you, its glass shimmering faintly in the mist, and you feel the comforting weight of possibility in your chest. Your journey as an inventor continues, endless and gentle, humming with curiosity, wonder, and the soft persistence of those who dare to imagine. Night has draped itself gently over London. The streets glisten faintly from an earlier rain. The cobblestones slick, reflecting the weak glow of gas lamps like scattered embers. A soft mist lingers in the alleys, curling upward around chimneys and rooftops, whispering through the narrow gaps between buildings. Your workshop is quiet now, save for the occasional creak of floorboards and the low, steady ticking of a small brass clock on the mantel. You sit at your desk, the warm amber light of a single candle flickering against the walls. The flame bends gently with every draft that slips through the cracked window, illuminating ink-stained paper and scattered sketches in soft, trembling waves. Wax drips slowly down the side, pooling like a miniature, molten sundial, measuring time in its slow, deliberate way. The world outside is alive with quiet motion. A carriage rattles past, the horse's hooves clicking in measured rhythm. A distant factory whistle rises and falls, fading into the fog. Somewhere, a child coughs in the night air. You breathe it in slowly, letting the mingling scents of rain, soot, and polished brass settle deep into your lungs. The city hums gently around you, yet here in your little attic, the hum is transformed. quieter, intimate, and intimately yours. Tonight, you write letters to no one in particular. Perhaps they are meant for yourself, or perhaps for some distant friend who may never read them. Each word is deliberate, each line curling across the page like the winding of a small spring. You write about invention, the thrill of coaxing movement from inert metal, the hush of anticipation as a coil begins to hum, the subtle despair of watching an experiment collapse into polite smoke. You write of folly, acknowledging with gentle humour the absurdity of dreams that tilt so precariously against reality. And you write of wonder, that quiet, persistent awe that has carried you from the first spark of an idea to the endless nights of tinkering, drawing, imagining. The candle flickers again, as if in response to your thoughts, and you glance at its small flame. It trembles like a delicate heart, casting long shadows across the walls, stretching your own hands into dark, unreal shapes. The wax has pulled further, curling around the base like a miniature moat protecting the fragile flame. You watch it for a moment, fascinated, and realize how much of invention is like this candle, a small living thing, vulnerable yet persistent, glowing faintly even in the most uncertain moments. Your pen moves slowly, leaving trails of ink that bleed into the page, delicate and unhurried. You recall the machines in your attic, the coiled wires, the half-finished wings, the small mechanical birds that never took flight. Each one rests now in silence, their potential paused, waiting patiently for the next touch of curiosity, the next gentle coaxing of thought into motion. You smile softly at them, remembering the quiet exhilaration of each attempt, the polite hisses, the faint whirring of gears that almost sang. Outside, the fog thickens. The sound of a steam whistle cuts through it, mournful and yet oddly comforting, like a long sigh threading through the city's chest. You imagine it carrying the hopes of every dreamer tucked away in their attics, basements, and workshops. Somewhere in its mournful pitch is the echo of your own nights, the long hours, the quiet failures, the gentle triumphs that need no audience. You pause and lay down your pen for a moment, letting your hand hover above the page. Your mind drifts through memory and imagination. As it often does in the late hours, you think of mornings spent polishing brass fittings, afternoons watching the hum of other inventors' machines at the Crystal Palace, nights of whispered conversations with friends who understand the obsessive pulse of curiosity. You feel the rhythm of your own life entwined with the rhythm of the city, the rhythm of creation itself, a slow, deliberate, and utterly intimate cadence. The candle flickers again, and you notice how the shadows dance across the scattered sketches on your desk. Each drawing seems to move slightly in the lamplight, as if alive, shifting between possibility and reality. You trace one finger along the edge of a winged contraption, half dreaming of its flight. You remember the soft hum of the coil that once sparked and then faltered, and you feel an odd comfort in the memory. Failure, you realize, is not absence but presence, a quiet companion that reminds you of the beauty in trying. The room grows warmer with the candle's glow, yet the night outside presses cool and damp against the glass. You wrap a shawl loosely around your shoulders and return to your letters. The ink has dried in some places, still wet in others, creating a landscape of thought that is uneven yet alive. You write about the anticipation that hangs before every new idea, the quiet thrill when metal responds just as you hoped, and the patient patience of watching a machine settle into its rhythm, even if it will never be perfect. You pause again to listen. The city exhales softly, a low murmur of life beyond your window. Somewhere a dog barks faintly, a carriage rattles, the whistle rises and fades. You imagine the lives unfolding in the foggy streets, each person engaged in their own quiet struggle, creation or discovery. And you feel In that hush, a kinship that stretches far beyond the walls of your workshop. A thread of shared curiosity, of gentle persistence threading through the entire city. The candle's wax has pulled further now, curling in intricate folds, and you watch as it slowly hardens. You see a metaphor in its deliberate descent, the way time flows unhurried, each moment solidifying into memory, each failure, each sketch, each hum of a coil becoming part of the quiet architecture of your life. You realize that invention itself is like this wax, fragile, fleeting, yet enduring in ways that are subtle, nearly invisible, but profoundly permanent. Your pen moves again, leaving careful strokes along the page. You write about the contraptions that have failed politely, the sparks that have shivered and died, the experiments that have sputtered and hissed, yet each is alive in memory, carried forward into the next idea, the next sketch, the next quiet night of tinkering. You write about hope, gentle and unassuming, threading through each line like a hidden current beneath the surface of thought. A soft breeze shifts through the cracked window, disturbing the candle flame. It wavers, bends, and then settles once more. You lean close, feeling the warmth against your face, and you imagine the flame as a tiny heartbeat, alive in the quiet room. Your hands hover over the page again, and you feel that same pulse of life in your own chest, the pulse of curiosity, of patience, of invention. The fog outside thickens further, muffling the distant sounds of the city. The steam whistle calls again, long and low, and for a moment it feels as though the entire city has exhaled in unison, as though all the inventors, dreamers, and quiet observers are breathing together. You close your eyes for a heartbeat, letting the sound settle into your mind, into your bones, into the rhythm of your own work. The candle burns lower, the wax pooling into a slow, deliberate clock. You set down your pen and lean back, the chair creaking softly beneath you. The letters lie scattered, each a small confession, a record of thought, a meditation on curiosity and folly and wonder. You feel a gentle satisfaction in knowing that this, the writing, the thinking, the dreaming, is as important as any invention that hums or whirs in the corner of your attic. Outside, the fog presses against the glass, and the city breathes faintly beneath it. The warmth of your candle and your desk wraps around you, and for the first time tonight, you feel entirely at peace. The night is long, the wax slow, and your mind quiet but alive, spinning gently like a well-oiled gear. You close your eyes fully now, letting the quiet seep into every corner of your mind. The candle flickers one last time before settling into a dim glow. The wax hardened into its final shape. Outside, the steam whistle sounds again, and you drift gently into the space between wakefulness and dream, where invention, curiosity, and the slow passage of night move together as one. The night stretches gently across the city, long and quiet, carrying with it the faint hum of distant factories and the low sigh of coal-burning chimneys. Your workshop is still, the only motion the soft flicker of lamplight across scattered tools and sketches, and the gentle, rhythmic ticking of a clock that seems to measure more than time. It measures anticipation, patience, and possibility. Tonight, your hands are busy, guided by a mixture of thought and instinct, the quiet insistence that has driven you through countless nights of tinkering. On the workbench lies your creation, a machine unlike any you have attempted before. Its form is delicate, almost fragile, made of fine brass rods, spiraling gears, and copper filaments that wind in impossible loops. Small glass tubes glow faintly with an inner light, and tiny pistons pulse with gentle rhythm, so subtle you almost question whether they are moving at all. You have no real name for it, nor a complete understanding of its purpose. It does not seem meant to serve any practical function. It exists for the sake of curiosity itself, a testament to the quiet thrill of invention. You run your fingers lightly across its surface. The metal is warm from the faint current that flows within, humming softly, vibrating with life in a way that is almost imperceptible. You can feel the energy thrumming under your fingertips, a delicate heartbeat that mirrors your own. It is alive, though you do not know what alive means in the context of brass and copper and glass. Perhaps it does not matter. The workshop is suffused with the familiar sense of lamp oil, soot and varnish, mingling with the faintly sweet tang of metal warming in the lamplight. You inhale deeply, letting the mixture settle in your chest, grounding you outside. The city hums softly, the muted clatter of horse hooves, the distant whistle of a train, the faint echo of a bell marking time. It is as if the entire world pauses to witness the quiet unfolding of your experiment. You sit on a stool, leaning close to the machine, your eyes tracing the delicate lines and curves, the tiny gears that spin with faint, perfect imperfection. You wonder, quietly, what it is meant to do. Will it record sound? Will it move on its own? Will it whisper secrets if you listen closely? The answers do not come, and yet you do not mind. There is a profound joy in the not knowing, in allowing an invention to exist purely as a possibility. You adjust a small lever, and the machine hums slightly louder, glowing with a warm, golden light. The room seems to bend around it, the shadows stretching and curling in the lamplight. Dust motes drift lazily in the glow, moving as if in quiet reverence, and you imagine that the machine is aware of them, aware of you, aware of its own improbable existence. For a long while, you do nothing but watch. You sip at tea that has gone cold, letting its faint bitterness mix with the sweet anticipation of creation. Your mind wanders gently through past experiments, the polite hisses, the collapses of earlier contraptions, the sparks that leapt and died, and you feel a soft amusement at your own persistence. This machine, unlike its predecessors, requires nothing from you but observation. Its purpose is not to perform, to impress, or to function. Its purpose is simply to exist. The glow deepens slightly, warm and welcoming, filling the corners of the workshop with soft light. You notice the shadows it casts, delicate and intricate, mirroring the loops and spirals of the machine itself. For a moment, it seems as if the room has become larger, expanding gently to accommodate this strange, quiet life. You feel a sense of calm settle over you, a rare and delicate satisfaction that is different from the thrill of a successful experiment or the frustration of failure. This is the satisfaction of something completed, yet undefined, something that belongs entirely to the imagination. You reach out to adjust a small gear. It clicks softly under your touch, the motion precise and delicate. The glass tubes glow a little brighter, responding to your attention, and the tiny pistons pulse with an almost human rhythm. You imagine that it is breathing, softly, faintly, a mechanical creature with no need for function, only for presence. Outside, a soft breeze presses against the workshop window, carrying with it the sense of night, damp earth, coal smoke, and the faint sweetness of distant gardens. The city exhales slowly, and for a brief moment it feels as though the entire world has paused, holding its breath, observing this quiet miracle of copper and glass. You lean back, hands resting lightly on the edge of the desk. Your eyes roam over the machine again, and you allow yourself to imagine what it might do if it chooses to do anything at all. Perhaps it records the passage of air through the room. Perhaps it hums in patterns that only it understands. Perhaps it simply glows, content with its own presence. Each possibility is a small delight, a tiny spark in the quiet night. The lamplight flickers, shadows dancing across the walls, and you realize how much of invention is like this machine, undefined, unpredictable, yet full of potential. You have spent years chasing ideas, coaxing metal and wire to obey, And yet here is a machine that refuses to serve any purpose beyond its own quiet existence. You feel an odd kinship with it, recognizing the same stubborn insistence that has guided your own life of curiosity and exploration. You adjust the light of the lamp slightly, letting it fall in a perfect beam across the glowing tubes. The warmth radiates into your chest, slow and steady. You trace your finger along one of the tiny spirals, marveling at the intricacy, the balance, the impossibility of it. It seems absurd, perhaps even pointless, yet that absurdity is precisely what makes it beautiful. Time stretches in the workshop, long and elastic. You sip tea again, letting its bitterness mingle with the warmth of the glowing machine. Outside, the city hums on, indifferent and eternal, yet within these walls, a different rhythm holds sway, a rhythm of quiet curiosity, delicate creation, and the gentle heartbeat of something that exists purely because it can. You imagine, for a moment, walking away and leaving it here, untouched for days, weeks, perhaps months. You wonder if it would continue to hum, to glow, to pulse softly in the darkness, a monument to the quiet insistence of imagination. Perhaps no one will ever understand it, and yet it does not matter. Its existence is reward enough, a small miracle in brass and glass. A soft cough of wind presses against the window again. The faint whine of a distant steam engine drifts upward, and the candle flickers, sending shadows leaping across the workbench. The machine glows steadily, unaffected, self-contained, radiant in its quiet defiance of purpose. You feel a warmth spread through your chest, a satisfaction deeper than pride or triumph. The satisfaction of witnessing something complete, independent, serene. You sit back and close your eyes for a moment, listening to the gentle hum of the machine. It pulses softly in time with your own heartbeat, a rhythm that is neither demanding nor hurried, neither anxious nor boastful. It exists for no reason other than the simple fact of existence. And in that simplicity, you recognize a truth about creation itself. Not all inventions must change the world. Not all ideas must perform. Not all curiosities require validation. Some are simply, quietly, and beautifully alive. You take a final sip of tea, now lukewarm, and watch the machine glow in the lamplight. Its tiny pistons move with delicate precision. The glass tubes glow faintly, and the spirals of brass shine in intricate patterns. You smile softly, soot smudged on your fingers, heart warmed by the quiet achievement. The invention that never was is, in its own small way, perfect. Outside, London exhales into the night. The distant whistles fade, the cobblestones glisten, and the fog curls gently around the gas lamps. Inside your workshop, the machine hums softly, glowing with quiet insistence. You lean back, hands folded in your lap, letting the warmth and the quiet of the night settle into your chest. You do not need to name it. You do not need to understand it. It is enough that it is a small miracle of brass and glass, of curiosity and persistence, of patience and quiet imagination. And in the soft hum of your workshop, you feel the world and your own restless mind fold gently around it, content, serene, and utterly at peace. Time moves gently here, in the soft corners of memory and quiet attics. The streets of London have shifted since your first mornings. Chimneys still sighing and smoke curling lazily into the pale sky. Yet somehow quieter now, as if the city has softened with age. You walk slowly, hands brushing along walls and banisters, feeling the echoes of your own past curiosity humming beneath the layers of dust. The air smells faintly of old wood, varnish, and forgotten metal, a perfume that lingers like a gentle sigh. Your workshop has changed. The once bright brass has dulled to soft bronze, copper coils have tarnished, and many sketches, once fresh with ink and hope, now curl at the edges with the slow inevitability of age. yet nothing is lost. Every mechanism, every contraption, every coil and spring holds a quiet vitality, like a small pulse frozen in time. They are no longer humming with your hands guiding them, but they still carry the memory of motion, of the small imperceptible rhythms that once filled the room. You step closer to a shelf where a tiny automaton leans, a single wing slightly bent and a minute brass key frozen mid-turn. It sits patiently, as though it knows that its purpose is not to function perfectly, but to bear witness. You trace your fingers lightly over the metal, imagining the hours you spent coaxing life from these parts, the careful coaxing, the soft hissing, the gentle sparks that leapt and fizzled, each a heartbeat of possibility. The air is still, but it feels alive. Sunlight filters through the attic window in gentle trembling slats, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in lazy golden arcs. They seem to move with quiet intent, settling occasionally on a gear, a sketch, a small coil of copper. In this calm, time bends slightly, folding over itself, carrying years like a gentle current. You feel the presence of all your past experiments here, not as failures, not as relics, but as a quiet testimony to the life of curiosity you lived. You wander from shelf to shelf, pausing at the most delicate of your creations. A brass bird, its wings folded in precise loops, catches the light. You remember the nights you stayed up imagining it in flight, soaring above the rooftops, above the chimneys, beyond the fog of the city. You wonder with a soft smile if children in the neighborhood still imagine similar things. Mechanical birds, airships, small wonders that might never fully take flight but live in the mind with perfect clarity. In the soft silence of the attic, you hear faint echoes, perhaps imagined, of voices long gone. The laughter of apprentices you once taught, the quiet approval of Mr. Penumbra as he held his teacup, the polite curiosity of the Society of Practical Engineers as they nodded and left, all fold gently into the stillness. Their presence is soft, almost imperceptible, yet it warms the room like the gentle hum of a machine quietly at rest. Outside, the city pulses with life. Children run past the streets below, tinkering with springs and magnets, their imaginations alive and vivid. You can almost see them tracing the arcs of invisible gears, building airships from scraps, dreaming in the quiet, undemanding way that only the young can. Somewhere in their motion, in the subtle patterns of creation and exploration, your influence lingers, a whisper carried forward through time. You recognize it not as a claim or a legacy in the usual sense, but as the continuation of curiosity itself, moving through hands and minds other than your own. A breeze drifts through the attic window, carrying the faint scent of coal and earth. You watch it ripple across the sketches on the desk, turning pages gently as if the air itself wants to read them. Your inventions sit patiently, still and quiet, yet in their stillness there is a sense of persistence. The energy that once hummed beneath your fingers now rests in the potential of others, in the invisible chain of inspiration that stretches beyond the walls of this attic, beyond the streets of London, beyond the fragile boundaries of your own lifetime. You kneel beside a small peculiar contraption, the one you built without knowing its true purpose, the invention that simply existed to exist. Its copper spirals glint faintly in the sunbeams, its tiny pistons frozen mid-pulse, and you can feel its quiet insistence, like a heartbeat caught in amber. You realize that the machine's existence is no longer yours alone. It belongs to the space of imagination that spans years and minds. It is alive in the hands of dreamers who may never see it, but who carry its spirit forward nonetheless. The attic feels suspended in time, a bridge between past and future, between the energy of your youthful inventiveness and the subtle pulse of curiosity in others. Every coil, every gear, every glass tube holds a memory of motion, of wonder, of patient persistence. You allow yourself to imagine the inventors yet to come, children and adults alike, who will stand where you once stood, hands smeared with oil, eyes wide with possibility, coaxing motion from metal, light from coils, life from imagination. You run your fingers over a polished brass lever, remembering the long nights spent adjusting, bending and realigning every piece until it obeyed the will of your mind. The quiet laughter that rose when something sputtered and fell apart, the soft exclamations when a coil finally hummed as you imagined, the careful patience of hours of observation and gentle coaxing, all remain embedded in the work, invisible yet present. These memories are not only yours, they belong to the very air, the wooden floors, the brass and glass that have absorbed the pulse of your inventiveness. Outside, the sounds of London rise softly through the attic window. Horses clip-clop along the cobblestones. A distant whistle hums faintly, and the occasional carriage rattles past. Yet amidst this gentle pulse of the city, the quiet legacy of your life of invention persists, invisible but tangible. You realize that even as dust settles on brass and copper, as the sketches curl at the edges, the essence of curiosity, the insistence of experimentation, and the soft thrill of seeing the impossible coaxed into existence continue to move in subtle ways through the world. You sit back against the wall, the sun warm on your face, and let your eyes roam over the workshop one last time. The automata, the delicate birds, the coiled machines, the sketches and diagrams. They are not only relics of your hands, but living reminders of what it means to create, to dream, to persist. They are quiet companions, patient and forgiving, reflecting not just your work, but your spirit. You imagine a child in some distant room, perhaps on the other side of London, fiddling with springs and magnets, assembling something that will not function as intended, but which hums with the quiet pulse of possibility. Somewhere, in that simple act of play, the essence of your life's curiosity continues. You feel a soft warmth in your chest, a deep, unhurried satisfaction. The inventions may gather dust, but the spirit that created them, patient, persistent, playful, and endlessly curious, has not faded. It drifts, invisible, through minds and hearts, a quiet current of wonder threading through time itself. A breeze lifts a small paper from the desk, turning it over gently before it lands again. The sunlight catches the edges of a tiny gear, glinting like a secret, and you let yourself smile. This is your inheritance, your quiet gift. Not a machine that changes the world, not a patent that dominates a market, but a subtle, enduring pulse of curiosity that refuses to vanish. It lives quietly in others, humming softly, unseen yet palpable. You rise slowly, brushing dust from your coat. The room feels full of echoes, of gears turning, of experiments collapsing politely, of sparks leaping, of quiet laughter, of small victories whispered to the night. You take one last look around, feeling a profound peace. Your inventions will rest here, patient and observant, awaiting the hands and minds that will awaken their spirit once more. Outside, London hums beneath the fog, gas lamps glowing faintly in the mist. The city moves slowly, a soft rhythm threading through streets and alleys, past homes and workshops, past children dreaming in their rooms. Somewhere in that rhythm, your curiosity drifts gently, carrying the quiet insistence of invention and imagination. It passes through hands and hearts, carried forward by those who will never know your name, yet will feel the pulse of possibility you have left behind. You step carefully down the attic stairs, letting the air shift around you, brushing lightly past your inventions. They sit quietly, patient and eternal in their own small way. You breathe deeply, savouring the scent of wood, metal and oil, and feel the satisfaction of a life spent pursuing wonder. As you close the workshop door behind you, leaving the machines to their quiet vigil, you feel the gentle rhythm of the world continue, a rhythm of curiosity, persistence, and the enduring joy of creation. And somewhere, in the soft motion of springs, gears and imaginations yet to awaken, the quiet legacy of your life persists, glowing faintly, like a brass heart, pulsing in the attic of time. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.